This is Steve Vinson. You're about to experience the life science effect. Hello, aspiring leaders. Welcome to another episode of the Life Science Effect, where we work to answer the question, what does it take for me to be an effective leader in the field of life sciences? Each week, we will talk to the best in the business to answer your questions about what it takes to be a leader in life sciences. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And always be asking yourself, what effect will you cause? Welcome to the show. We're here today with Troy Gobbett. Say hello, Troy.
Hey, Steve. How you doing?
I'm
Hi,
doing
everyone.
So Troy is a business operations and project management professional with over 20 years of experience managing laboratories, facilities, large-scale human and animal drug development projects. He is currently the president and CEO of the company I'm going to pronounce incorrectly, Carcharodon Consulting. Just fix the way I pronounce the name of your company and fill in the blanks. Maybe give us a peek into your personal life.
Yeah, sure. Well, you were close. Carcharodon Consulting. I think I shared with you before, just for some color commentary, where that name came from. My favorite movie being Jaws. So the genus of the great white shark being Carcharodon, that's where we came up with that. So
how many people actually know that?
Do you know your colleague Peter nailed it on the first time?
Well, Peter's British, so English is his first language. So I'm not surprised that he would know that.
Yeah. So you kind of hit the highlights there. I've been at this for quite a while. Started out in the academic setting, at the bench side as a research tech lab manager. Moved up through, joined the CRO side for a while, then went to large pharma. So it's been a bench to bedside sort of journey in various roles, from a technician to a business development director. Director of operations and research, and then in the program and project management space. It's been a fun ride.
So your undergraduate was in biology?
Biology.
And what was your graduate work in?
Molecular and developmental biology. So if you want to ever have a pre-implantation mouse discussion, I'm your guy. I would, except every night at dinner, that's all anybody wants to talk about. I can hear the
kids,
that.
The wife. If the dog could talk, it'd be all pre-implantation mouse talk. So thanks, but I'll pass on that one. So seeing as how that was your undergrad, I suppose life science was a natural progression. But now that you're a leader in life science, why would you say, that you kind of chose that path? Unless, of course, the path chose you. Yeah. Or in a nutshell, why would anybody want to be a leader in this space? What motivates you?
Yeah, so for me, I think it was the latter of your comments. I think the path chose me. I've always been interested in the life science and biology and that space. And then I was lucky enough early on in my career to get matched up with mentors and coaches and management that encouraged and helped me to develop those leadership skills and that ability, and then put me in positions where I could actually exercise those abilities to continue to grow. And I think that's what's sort of great, even in the Indianapolis community, if we think in the life science market, is it's so rich with those mentoring, coaching abilities, where if you have an interest, you can find someone, pair up with someone to help develop that and grow and point you in the right directions.
Do you have any like quick pointers on how somebody could find, let's say one of the listeners is like, yeah, that sounds great. How do I find a mentor?
Yeah, so I think the way I did it was started going to networking events. You go to the right events, you make one handshake. That handshake just becomes exponential after that, and you continue to meet, and someone will introduce you, and you express an interest. And while that person may not know someone, like, hey, I know a guy, or here's a friend you can go talk to. I will give a shout out to Kristen Jones and the IHIF. There's no one out there that's better at saying, oh, here's someone.
That's how we met.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, she's a sponsor, the Indiana Health Industry Forum's a sponsor. So at some point, our listeners are going to hear a spot later in the show describing what they do. And that's starting to become a theme almost. This is going to be the 5th episode. And at least 2 or 3 other episodes have been either I or the guest giving advice to go to the networking events. And I absolutely have to 100% agree. And yeah, when I met with Kristen, she said, you should know Troy Gobbett. And I was like, okay, I'll go know Troy Gobbett.
Yeah.
Right? And here we are.
Well, the key is meeting that right person at the right time. Yeah. The only way to do that is to get yourself out there and start meeting and handshaking and talking to people.
Absolutely. And if you need more suggestions, obviously you can go to, you can contact me for sure. I'm sure you could contact Troy, give you his contact information later. So now let's say you're building a team, you're choosing leaders to work with. What are the most important characteristics that you're looking for?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I'm going to sum it up by not sort of just going through a bullet list, but sort of describing a role that I always think is, to me, the kind of leadership you want to find or to match yourself up with. And I'm not a boating, technical term wizard, but the captain of a whitewater raft, to me, sort of exemplifies what you want your leader to be. There's a person that takes a group of strangers or a group, some of them may or may not know each other. You get in a water, you put yourself in a situation, and within minutes, this person's able to gain everyone's trust, gain not only in him, but within each other. They all start doing things together. They're all sort of relying on him to steer them in the right direction. Now, he knows the river. The river changes every day, but from the back of the pack, he's able to see forward enough to say, here's where we need to go, here's where we shouldn't be going, and is not afraid to tell you the risks of what you're going to do, but then how he's going to navigate and get around those. Mm-hmm. So to me, those are the types of leaders I want to be with and work with, is those visionary strategy coaching people that say, let's go. And then when you're done with that journey, you've grown a little bit, you've developed some better, working relationships, and you've had a little bit of fun, and you've met your destination.
Oh, that's great. I remember one of my earliest mentors was my first boss, actually. Still, I like that he just retired from Lilly, even though he's not old enough. He took their early retirement package, and I almost fainted because I thought, you can't be that old. Anyway, he's not. We talked about the boat analogy, and I had done some whitewater rafting for the first time. And he's like, yeah, leader's role is make sure everybody's paddling in the right direction, Yeah. And knowing the river is part of that, isn't it?
Well, and for me too, when I left the academic space, so the IU School of Medicine, I went from a laboratory there, a few labs there, and went on to a small startup, CRO up on the Northwest side. I happened to get lucky enough to join with 2 guys that were boating captains in that aspect. But they were also, I guess, brave enough at that time to say, you want to get us there? Go. Oh. And they were willing to stand behind me and let me take my punches, let me take the falls, let me learn and navigate and start to and develop that way. And, to this day, we still meet, even though I left that company about 6 years ago, and they have since sold it and retired. We still meet for lunch and have those discussions. So that that's those types of things are always awesome.
You don't have to go it alone, folks. Find a good mentor. So, what project sticks out in your mind as a great success? It's the project that you're so proud of. Well, and how did your leadership play a role?
Yeah, so every project, from a project management standpoint, if you can get a project to land on time, under budget, you're very proud of that. But I think for me, it was one of the first ones where I actually had that opportunity to step in and sit at that chair at the head of the table, working with a Preclinomics, which is the CRO up on the Northwest side. About halfway through my tenure there, we decided to become ALAC accredited. And that's a process of going through, describing your animal care and use program, pulling all your facility data and sort of packaging it all up and having these accreditors come through. We wanted to do it. It takes a lot of time. And I said, hey, I'll let me see if I can get us, I'll lead us through this and see what we can do. And so we worked for about a year pulling all that information together. I had the privilege of being put in that position. I also had the privilege of working with a group of people that everyone was focused on that prize and literally did whatever it is we needed to do to get us there. Mm-hmm. And we were accredited on our first visit. And I don't even know that we had any follow-up after the auditors left, other than getting the envelope with the certificate in the mail.
Great.
So that's always sort of the feather of, I had no idea. I was not an animal care and use expert at that, but it was an unknown. And I said, let's go.
So you weren't an expert. How were you able to lead that team of, I presume, experts?
Yeah. So you immediately learn who to reach out to and ask. So we had an attending veterinarian that we were working with on a contractual basis. So I reached out to him. He would say, okay, you need to read this. You need to go talk to these people. Here's some trade shows or conferences to go attend. Mm-hmm. And then immediately just started consuming that information and assimilating it and working with people of how to pull that together and understand everything. So I wasn't on day one, but by the time the auditors walked in the door, I was an animal care and use expert.
Gotcha. Did you have I don't know if this is part of your personality, but it's certainly part of mine, is the not afraid to look dumb in the right way, if that makes sense. Yeah. As a consultant, I don't want to ever go in and look dumb necessarily, but you can't look any dumber than when you pretend to know something or fail to ask about something that is important to know. Right. And if you can ask it in a way that says, hey, my role as leader, my role as project manager, my role as CEO or whatever it is, you're the expert. Help me. You know, do you have that kind of thing in your personality?
You have to. And I I'm going in being purposely naive.
Purposely naive. I like that. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. So you kind of go in, you know, from a project management perspective, as you work yourself through enough of these projects, you sort of know what questions to ask when and who to ask them of. And so the key is to get in that room. I'm not the expert. The people in that room are the expert. But what I am an expert in is asking the right questions. Yeah. And getting things mapped out and aligned so that we actually make progress. So that's why I say I pretend to be somewhat naive in asking questions. You know, even if you're building something as a timeline and you get a date and you get that gut feeling of, I don't know. Yeah. You know how to say, all right, walk me through.
Walk me through. Walk me through. Help me understand.
Yeah, those are two great lines I always use.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I like the purposely naive.
Yeah.
Purposely naive. You can get a lot of information that way. And you can build people's character and you can build relationships that way as well. All right, enough about the good stuff. So what's the big one, the horror story and a failure or something that you perceived maybe as a failure or challenge that you didn't do as well as you would like?
Yeah.
What was the learning that you took away from that?
Yeah. So I don't know that much of that project. Obviously, when you work in the consulting space, the agreements say what you can and can't talk about. But it was a software development launch kind of project. We did the requirements gathering, worked with the team, worked our way through it. I thought we were meeting the expectations, and then, you know, post-launch and follow-up, there were things missing, gaps that should have been obvious or should have been taken care of. And so I think my takeaway from that at that time was you can never ask too many questions and you can never over-communicate. And that's where communication becomes so key in the role that we do, is keeping everyone informed and keeping everyone up to speed so that if there's something missed, then they're able to react right away and not afterwards.
How would you have done that differently?
I would have asked a lot more questions.
Okay. Was it because you were trusting that somebody on the team knew what they were doing and it turned out they didn't, or what were the kinds of questions you would have been asking?
I think everyone on the team knew what they were doing. I just don't think we were aware that we weren't doing it exactly what was being in the mind of the management team. So they had a distinct image in their head of what the outcome would be. And the team had a different expectation of that. And so I think a little bit more time at the beginning aligning that and aligning those expectations would have then eliminated a lot of the downstream grief that comes. But again, no project goes perfect.
No.
And you would question yourself if they all did. But the true value in that is you're able to do at the end, that's what lessons learned are for, is to learn and not do that again.
And sharing those, some companies are good at it. Some companies aren't great at sharing those lessons learned.
Yeah.
We're even worse at it, sharing it from one company to another.
Right.
Because nobody wants to sound like they messed up, right?
Yeah.
When in the reality, like you said, you can learn something on every single project. And the project that goes perfectly it's a unicorn. It's so rare. Yeah. Projects don't go perfectly.
Right.
And so you can always learn something, right? I think that would be the agile, when you look at agile for software development and stuff, I think that group sort of just acknowledge that things do get messed up. The faster we mess them up, the sooner we can fix them. And to me, that's the whole philosophy behind agile.
Yeah. So. Well, and I've noticed too on some of these lessons learned, you have teams or companies. They're great at going through the exercise, but it's the implementation afterwards. Did you really go through and think about things and retool and restructure it so that type of issue doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
Or they're afraid to be raw in that session.
Yeah.
And so it's just sort of a fluff of, we need to do this, instead of really digging in.
Or how often is the lesson, we did this and that didn't work. So our lesson is don't do that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like going to the doctor. My arm hurts when I do this. Well, don't do that, So thinking about your current organization, your consulting company, or maybe one of your clients, without divulging any confidential information, of course, what are the obstacles like today that you're coming up against, and what are you doing and what's working well to remove those obstacles?
Yeah. So I think it's probably the same for every organization, is silos are a big issue to work in and around. And sometimes those are built purposely, and other times they just sort of happen organically when people don't even realize that they've now siloed themselves, which then leads to communication problems. Yeah. And so a lot of what I do is taking time to sit with people to actually get people to talk. Let's bring more than one person in the room to talk about what's going on, because someone else outside of your group may have a different perspective. Yeah. And that perspective is what helps lead you through to change. So I spend a lot of time in that, or getting people to remember to communicate.
Remember to communicate, yeah.
So, they'll send an email, but did they put the right people on the email? Was the subject such that someone actually paid attention? We all get emails where there's 15 people in the to field. Which one of the 15 was that to?
Right, right. What do I need to know from this email? Yeah. So anything else that you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance because I didn't ask the right question about what you're currently working on, or anything in general?
I think I'm good so far. I feel like I've been talking 90 miles an hour. The listeners are probably...
we can slow that down in post. We'll make you sound drunk. Cool. Well, we're going to take a break before we do, and then I'll have you do it again at the end. If somebody wants to get a hold of you or wants to follow what you're doing, whether social media or email, how do they do that?
LinkedIn is the easiest. Trying to remember tgobbett at carcharodonconsulting.com is not always the easiest thing. So just look me up on LinkedIn and we'll connect that way.
All right. So just search for Troy Gobbett.
Yeah.
All right. We could do that.
Sure.
So before we take a break, anything else that you didn't get a chance to say that you wanted to tell the listeners about what you're currently working on, or your management philosophy, whatever?
Yeah, sure. So there is a project I just wrapped up. I'm going to give another shameless plug to a group. It's the Apprentice University. So I don't know if you've heard of that. I encourage people to take a look at that. But I worked with some other industry colleagues, project management industry, not the life science. And we were putting together a curriculum for a project management certificate. So it's the electronic badging where people work through a rubric of determining, okay, this is what it takes to become a project manager.
Okay.
So we were able to, everyone that lives and dies by the PMBOK, take that and say, okay, this is the structure, but those of us that do it every day, what do you do? So how do you actually apprentice someone to not chapter and verse, but to actually go out and get work done? And that was a lot of fun to work with some new colleagues that I hope to work with again and building that out.
Where do they go to find Apprentice University?
So it's Apprentice University. Just Google that, and you can find it online.
Right on.
So Ron Brumberger, I think if I pronounced his name correctly, is I think one of the ones that started it. So you can also find him on LinkedIn, and you get to him that way as well. Based
in Indiana? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll do rapid fire.
Bring it.
A very special thanks to our first sponsor this week. It's the Indiana Health Industry Forum. IHIF is a statewide trade association representing Indiana's health science business community.
That's good.
The diverse members of the Indiana Health Industry Forum generate the collective voice of the state's health and life science industry. Their mission is to connect key stakeholders to enhance business networks, advocate for member interests, develop workforce skills, and provide strategic vision in the interest of growing the state's health industry, economy, and reputation. Please take a look at their site for more information. It's ihif.org, and you can learn about how they serve members across Indiana. Their leadership members include companies like Lilly, Cook, IU Health, and some other sponsors of theirs are Roche and Fort Wayne Metals. So please check out ihif.org and check out their sponsors. And thank you so much to Kristen Jones, their fabulous CEO and president, and also thanks to IHIF. Now back to the show. Welcome back to the Life Science Effect. We're with Troy Gobbett, sorry, it's an O, it's not an A. Troy Gobbett from Carcharodon Consulting. Are you ready for the rapid fire round?
Let's go.
Finish this sentence. The one principle I will never compromise is
integrity.
What is one thing every aspiring leader should stop doing today?
Selling it.
What's the one thing every aspiring leader should start doing today?
Doing it.
Nice. You were ready for these. What are you reading or listening to these days?
Yeah, so I wish I had that kind of time.
That's why I added the listening. The first few episodes I said reading is like, oh, I don't have time to read.
Yeah, most of my listening is to Comedy Central, just to get something to laugh at and take a break. Reading wise, right now, because of one of my clients, I spend a lot of time reading regulations, federal regulations for FDA, USDA. But again, it's still an interesting read to learn something new and try to assimilate so that you can help a team navigate through something.
I recommend reading regulations. It's interesting because in our industry, maybe you've seen this, I run across a lot of people who think they know what the law says and what the regulations say because they heard it somewhere.
Right.
Like, oh, FDA won't let you. My favorite one is you have to use blue or black ink. FDA doesn't let you use anything but blue or black. Like, show me in the regulations where it says blue or black.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that your procedure says blue or black, which means you better be using blue or black.
Yeah.
But no, you're never going to get a citation for using red pen as long as it's
the
indelible.
word's indelible, right? Yeah, not blue or black.
You can't use eraser mate, but you can't use whiteout as long as it's indelible.
The fun part of that is actually then taking that information and it's the interpretation.
Yeah.
That's where the fun comes in those.
Yeah, the interpretation. Thinking back to when you used to read or have time to read, if you ever have, is there one book in particular or one resource that you would recommend to the listeners that had a big impact on you in your leadership?
You know, I read snippets of books. Like, what do I need out of this chapter or that chapter? Or, you know, a lot of Harvard Business Review, little short books. And some of my favorites were things like the Purple Cow, you know.
Seth Godin.
That was kind of interesting reads.
People who know me get sick of me talking about Seth Godin.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They have never told me that, but I would imagine.
Everyone remembers a Purple Cow, though.
It's true. I remember a Purple Cow. Every time I've seen one,
don't forget it. Right.
Okay, well, And Troy, this has been great, chock full of valuable information.
Thank you for having me.
It's been nice getting to know you a little better. We run into each other for 5 minutes here and there.
Yeah.
But just sitting down and asking you these kinds of questions, I feel like I know you slightly better. And I hope our listeners do too.
Right.
So everybody, don't forget to go give us some love over on Apple Podcasts. If that's where you get your podcast, give us a review, tell a friend, share thelifescienceeffect.com. And thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to Troy.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you on the next one. You have just experienced the Life Science Effect. If you liked it, be sure and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And more importantly, tell your colleagues, your boss, your friends. It'll make you look smart. Maybe it'll even get you a raise. Thanks again to our presenting sponsor, BPM Associates. Set your medical innovations in motion. BPM helps life sciences companies design, manage, and execute their most complex projects. What effect will you cause? And thanks to today's guest. Let us know who else I should be talking to. Send me an email at steven.vinson@bpm-associates.com. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Now go make something wonderful happen.